we might as well cover off a little bit of this now while we're waiting for Langers to join. But
Yeah, absolutely.
through,
Where do you want? Where would you like to start?
well, ETH Singapore, there's a couple of opportunities there for Langers to speak and then for us to present a little bit of I guess, more of a um, technical presentation slash workshop on staking. But in addition, there's going to be a few different side events. One focus on relays and MEV. So we're just deconflicting and confirming attendance at some of these um, other side events. And then also Token 2049 later in the week. That's another speaking opportunity from Langers. And I heard that there's going to be some content put out around that in about 3 or 4 days. And then finally, the following week, Digital Asset Week, Langers and I will be on site. The rest of the team will have flown back to Brisbane by that point. Uh, no speaking there, but we're just going to hang out and see what the vibe is. It sounds like there's going to be institutions, representatives from the Singaporean government, Singaporean stock exchange, some of the big tech firms like Google, etc. So yeah, it'll be a good opportunity as well. Um, Conveniently, all these events scheduled back to back, so we can make the most of the investment into airfares, which is still surprisingly expensive. It's only an 8 hour flight from Brisbane to Singapore, um, but the way that the airlines are charging, you would think you're going halfway around the world anyway.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. I was spending a part of the day trying to price out some flights out to DevConnect in Istanbul, and yeah, I was had a little bit of sticker shock on some of the routing. So, but this sounds like a really great opportunity. I mean, Singapore is certainly a hub of crypto assets, and it's great to hear. If I understood you, that all three of these are going to be at the same kind of host city and just kind of back to back to back. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the one. All in Singapore, different venues for them. The Token 2049 that is actually in the Marina Bay Sands Conference Center, which is pretty nice. If you've ever seen like tourism photos of Singapore, there's kind of a big hotel. It's kind of strangely shaped with pillars and then like a boat kind of structure on top. So next to that is a big conference center between for Token 2049. In between two of them, though, there is a Formula One race. So unfortunately, that means that the cost of accommodation goes through the roof at that point. So we are looking at jumping across to KL, Kuala Lumpur, for a few nights in between, just to save on accommodation. Um, but
Yeah, that's pretty crazy that I certainly understand it. There's an F1 race coming out to Las Vegas, and the hotel rooms just went astronomical that week. So I could see why it makes sense to fly out of country just to save on a hotel room. But that's that's pretty whacked up, man.
yeah, so yeah, if anyone is intending to attend some or all of these events next month, we do have a conferences channel in Discord, so feel free. There's a few comments in there from me where you can kind of give a thumbs up reaction to indicate if you might be there, or feel free to ping me, tag me in that channel if you have any additional information. We will have a booth at ETH Singapore as part of the sponsorship there. So that is being set up by ETH Singapore. So um, obviously at Denver, we got a lot of great help from the community for that. Thankfully, this time around, we can turn up on the day, and I expect the turnout to be quite a lot lower, but still, it's going to be a good opportunity to get the Rocket Pool name out there. Um, but yeah,
Are
I
you
also
looking
still
for? Are you looking for volunteers to help man that booth, or what do you need from the community?
So we thought about doing a roster like last time, but realistically, I think the combination of having, well, there's going to be six of the now seven team members on site. Unfortunately, this one's a little bit tricky for Joe to get to. But between us and it sounds like there's a handful of community members there, we should be able to manage it. I don't expect the demand and the foot traffic for the booth to be quite as high as at ETH Denver. Could be my famous last words there. I might end up kind of stuck on the booth all day, every day, but that's fine. But yeah, just in light of the reduced numbers, we thought it doesn't really make sense to have a detailed roster. But of course, assistance is not necessary, but always welcome. Potentially going to have the same kind of peaks and troughs of attendance that you get at these events, kind of loaded towards the front, and the late morning, early afternoons, and kind of tapering off towards the end. So those are probably the time periods where some help might be useful. Dave did say something about a new design for shirts, t-shirts. I'm not quite sure if we're going to get that sorted in time, or how much we'll have available to give away. I don't expect we're going to be doing like bulk giveaways like Denver. But yeah, it would just be good. Another good opportunity to, first of all, catch up with community members, maybe meet some new people who weren't at Denver, and then of course network with the rest of the industry. That was pretty valuable from last time. There are already a few good business development opportunities, meeting people in real life that we chat to all the time over Discord and Telegram, from some of the big name protocols. So yeah, it's going to be good. Maybe we should kick off the biweekly then. We could start with the marketing section and go in reverse, because yeah, I think some of these R&D and metric topics are good for Langers to chat about. So maybe we can kick things off with the media and marketing section, Ken.
Yeah, maybe the top news there, certainly at least by the number of posts and in crypto news sources here, was the Coinbase Ventures announcements of the OTC purchase of RPL that occurred. And I guess this might have been a purchase that they made a while back, but they just posted it on their Twitter and released it. What can you share about that?
Of course, just as we kick things off, Langers joins. Maybe we should jump back up to the top and do it in order then. Sorry for that, Ken.
Yeah, no worries. We're obviously taking it very, very flexible here. So from the top of the biweekly here, I guess with the protocol update over the last 2 weeks, there's been, as typical, a very large increase in the RE supply. It grew 3.5% to just shy of 500,000 RPL tokens, 497,908, which would be an annualized growth of 91%. The pending mini pool count, this is, I guess, for the entire Beacon chain, is down to just under 25,000 at 24,000. And I guess that's, you've switched the metric here, I guess, because the number of validators joining at any one time now has increased. I think we're all the way up to 11 validators per epoch that are joining. And I think this amount of join and queue length would mean that a new node operator or a new mini pool formation would be under the 28-day reward period. And that's going to be important, I think, in one of the other topics coming up. And our node operator count still continues to grow, up 1.2% to just over 3,000 node operators, 3,125. I think that represents some very strong and continued just constant growth for the protocol.
Yeah, the metrics for this time around are slightly different, and I believe part of this was kicked off from a discussion with, I think it was Noshua and Biz in trading, but I know that Langers has spent a bit of time reviewing these metrics, especially around the mini pool count, to make sure that that is accurate and a kind of good representation of what's going on with the protocol. But yeah, as we kind of mentioned a few times on these calls, it's important to remember that even if queues might be full or empty, there's still growth taking place, and not that we track market share here, but in the context of the kind of wider staking sector, Rocket Pool is still continuing to keep up. Langers, I'm not sure if you had anything to add on this area here.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, that number actually kind of fits better. I think there was a bit of when we changed from the last release, we some of the contracts changed under the hood, and we just needed to kind of like adjust to that to best reflect kind of the mini pool states. So that's what we've done. We've done there, which means the number is actually a little bit lower than it was like last fortnight, and because it's kind of like taking into account some of the exited mini pools. Yeah, so this is a much more representative number because it kind of includes both the pending and active and excludes a lot of the exiting mini pools.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I actually think I misspoke when I was reading the number quickly. That the 24,313 mini pool count, those are the number of pending or active ones. So those are I guess, the currently staking or soon to be staking mini pools that we have currently at least as of the publication of this biweekly 2 days ago.
Yeah, that's it. That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. The next thing we had on the list here was the Smart Node update. Looks like Joe pushed another update here, version 1.10.1. It included 2 medium priority updates for both Lighthouse and Lodestar operators, and then low priority for everyone else. Any comments on that about the new release?
No, I think it's a pretty straightforward release. I think there is there's like a ODAL update as part of that. I think I'm just double checking. Oh, actually, yeah. No, I think we're still testing out rolling records. That's right. I think we're still holding off on loading that for everybody. I think that is. But yeah, it's a reasonably kind of simple release for most node operators.
Yeah, I do recall something in there from the rolling records for ODAL members. I'll have to go and double check on that one. The rocket scientist ODAL is using a special patches generation of the reward tree just to add some diversity to the generation. But yeah, I do think it might have some ODAL requirement in there. I guess we should we should go and double check it. But on just like normal, as soon as Joe releases that, it looks like that there were 2 other, I guess, minor releases, both from Geth and Teku, and subsequent to him releasing the 1.10.1, we also had a first time where one of the supported relays, the blocks route ethical relay, is being sunsetted. And I understand they might be a future guest on one of the community calls here, but it'd be interesting to see when the next release comes up that won't have the built-in support for the blocks route ethical relay.
Yeah, I think Joe's already kind of worked on that. Or he's been working on it this week. So I'm not sure whether we're going to be pushing that out next week. So the 1.10.2 might be out next week, just to include those client changes. I think that's the plan at the moment.
Okay. Something to at least look forward to. Yeah, I'm kind of used to always Joe being on and can always tell us where he's thinking, but I guess we just have to get it secondhand on today's call. Moving to the R&D side, there's something I'm very excited about, which is that the core devs are talking a lot about Dan Kuhn, the next hard fork of Ethereum. I don't think they've set a date yet, and certainly it's all focused on proto-dank sharding. But one of the writer EIPs, or one of the lesser EIPs that looks very likely of being included in it, is EIP 4788, which is titled, access to the beacon block root in the EVM. Darren, I was wondering if you could just explain this a little bit more to us. And there was a comment here in the biweekly of the importance to Rocket Pool. Can you maybe explain that to everybody as to why we're so interested in that one?
Yeah, sure. So, I can't I can't express enough how important this EIP is. So, so essentially, Ethereum today is not really one chain. It's actually two chains under the hood, and they're two very separate chains. They are kind of like linked, but there's no way for like a smart contract to kind of know anything really about the beacon chain state. In other words, the execution kind of environment doesn't know anything about the consensus under the hood. So it's actually hard for us at the moment. We have to have kind of like oracles, that are kind of oracle information across the two, so that we can actually get that information into our smart contracts and use it within the protocol itself. Now, one of the very cool things is, so EIP 4788, what that does is it kind of embeds the consensus block root. So the state root, actually. So the state of the beacon chain is like a massive, great big tree of information, and it has a block root that the beacon chain commits to every block, and it provides us access to that block root, which is really good, because it means that we can start using that to within the Rocket Pool protocol itself. And there's a whole heap of stuff that we've kind of looked at in what we could use that for. What it really comes down to is that there's a few things that it comes down to, mainly around the ODAO duties. So it's actually kind of like removal of the ODAO duties is definitely something that we can use that for. In stages, there's a few there's things that are quite easy to do, and then there are things that require a bit more kind of structure around to be able to do it. Because what I mean by replacing the ODAO duties is that currently we rely on the Oracle DAO to perform some of these duties, but what we're looking at doing is putting that onto node operators rather than Oracle, rather than ODAO members. But obviously with that comes there's a whole kind of like crypto economic aspect to that. There's certainly some like security stuff that we need to be mindful of in terms of that. But what essentially it does, the block root does, is it turns those processes into trustless processes that a node operator can actually perform. So yeah, so it's like really exciting from that perspective. One of the biggest things though is for potentially the release after the next one for Rocket Pool is the whole mega pools thing. So being able to instead of having like a mini pool smart contract per validator that you deploy, actually having just one smart contract for at the node level, and having the smart contract actually manage those kind of like validators under the hood. That's something that is possible once 4788 goes live, because it gives us access to that information that we didn't have before. So yeah, just to summarize, really, 4788 makes Rocket Pool, or potentially makes Rocket Pool much more efficient. Like, I don't know, like 10x more efficient, and also it makes it more trustless. So they put those things together, and it's an amazing kind of like deliverable for us.
Yeah, it sounds like it's got tremendous potential. So let me just see if I kind of understand what's kind of rattling around there in your brain. Is that Dan Kuhn comes out, right? And I guess prior to that, there's a Rocket Pool update that has some features in it or some preparation. And that one, I think we referred to that as the Houston update, right? And then post Dan Kuhn, once 4788 is in place, as well as the other features, there's a second Rocket Pool update, I guess codename Saturn, that would allow for megapools to be included in the Saturn release. Is that what you're thinking? And perhaps maybe some of the release of the ODAO duties?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Excellent. Yeah. And then I did see that there was a little bit of debate about 4788 about how exactly to technically do that, I guess either with a contract or some state change and so forth. It looked like it took up a little bit of the discussion in the one of the all core devs, maybe the consensus layer call. Are you guys watching that? And does that affect us, or is it just, either way is fine by us? We just need to know how they're going to do it.
I think the interface is pretty much the same either way in terms of how a smart contract really we only really care about the what's available to us and what that interface looks like. So from an interface perspective, how it's implemented within the EVM itself doesn't really matter too much, as long as we can get the beacon state root at a particular basically every block. It doesn't really matter too much. So yeah, we're definitely keeping an eye on it, and I think Kane said that there's no like challenges for us in terms of that. It's all kind of like moving in the right direction.
Oh, excellent. And one of the things I'm looking forward to is I did see that there is the Ethereum Cat Herders, which is a group that helps with some of the documentation and kind of governance coordination of Ethereum, is doing, I guess, an in-depth review of it, something they call Peep and Eep, and that's coming up here in next month in September. So there is a link to that in the biweekly, and it's something I'm looking really forward to do, because I think they do a really good job kind of explaining it so that commoners like myself can understand it.
Yeah, they do. I've watched a few of those, and they're you're spot on. They explain it very, very well, and they have the experts, the actual experts that are developing it. Very informed, but also kind of very easy to understand.
Yeah. The next item on the biweekly was that the Immunified bug bounty has been increased. It's now currently at a very nice $500,000 for the critical bug finding. That was an update. What was some of the genesis or reasoning to increase that?
So it's something that we've kind of had, as part of the evolution of the bug bounty for quite a while. The only reason why it's been kind of left a little bit was we wanted to get Atlas out, and we wanted Atlas to be bedded in a little bit before we increased it. The other thing is we don't like to kind of announce the increases too much, because we don't want people to hold back on disclosing information to us. So they're kind of like the two reasons why we do it kind of what seems to be a little bit randomly at times. Going forward, it will be increased again. Obviously, we'll do it again another random kind of time, but the kind of aim is to kind of increase it on a reasonably regular basis.
Yeah, and I can certainly see as the total, the total amount under management, or the total, amount of equity staked with Rocket Pool increases, we'd certainly want that bug bounty to rise along with that, given
Exactly.
the amount of assets that are potentially at risk, right? The next item on here is one that I'm kind of very interested to learn about. We've heard about it. I don't know as if it's necessarily true. You've been kind of leading us on for quite a while about here, but apparently there is a there's a little bit of a graphic redesign, maybe a little bit of branding image. We've heard rumors of this thing, but what's the latest on that? Are those rumors true? Will we eventually see something? Mav was kind of hinting maybe in time for ETH Singapore, or maybe not. What can you share?
Yeah, ETH Singapore seems a good kind of like timing. So Sleety has kicked off the design work on early this week on doing basically a bunch of illustrations and that sort of thing for the website. With most of the website content and structure is all kind of like in place, but we want to kind of obviously get those graphics in there, because without them it's just a whole bunch of words and mismatched images at the moment. So but the designs that he's coming up with at the moment are really good. So we're really happy with how that's kind of like progressing. So he's working on that. Once we've kind of got like I guess, enough of it kind of like bedded down. The brand stuff is something that might take just slightly longer, but we are kind of like working through that at the moment. As soon as we have kind of that bedded down, we want to try and get that in front of the community as much as possible. So I mean, to be fair, like we want the community to kind of see it, but at the same time, there's a lot of cooks, a lot of chefs. With design work, it's quite it can be quite tricky. But around Singapore is definitely ideally before ETH Singapore is definitely a good timing.
All right. Well, we'll try to hold you guys to that this time here. But yeah, we're excited to, at least myself.
Please do. I know we've been mentioning it a lot and kind of, but yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah. I'm excited to see the new rebrand and the look, and of course at whatever next conference we line up with to get the new swag to go with it. The next item on here was the PDAO on-chain voting system. I know this one had been talked about a little bit before. At first, folks didn't understand what it was, and there was a little bit of confusion as to why the team was taking some of the precious dev time to work on it. But then maybe if you can explain a little bit more of the significance of this one, and are you still thinking this one will launch in Houston or afterwards? What's the latest on this?
Yeah, so that will be in Houston. So the idea around the PDAO on-chain voting system is that so currently the PDAO obviously they kind of make decisions through Snapshot, but this is all kind of like in line with the governance phase 0 Medium article that we put out quite a long time ago, which is around. So the PDAO have kind of like a signaling mechanism through Snapshot, which guides the protocol development and just generally how the protocol operates as a organization, I guess. So that mechanism is already in place, and obviously the forum is where there's public discourse about different issues and how kind of like decisions get made. Although Discord plays a big role in that as well. But the PDAO doesn't really have on-chain power. And that's something that we want to change. At the moment, a lot of the PDAO functions are kind of like executed on behalf of the community by the team. And we want to move away from that. That's not where we want to be. What this does is it hands over that PDAO control over to the PDAO as a voting body, rather than kind of executed on behalf of by the team. So this will enable things like there's some parameter changes that can be made via the PDAO kind of voting mechanism. There is also and then there's also like treasury spends. So and that sort of thing, setting up the treasury budgets and the treasury management aspects. That's all part of this kind of like PDAO on-chain voting system. So that will kind of give the PDAO full control over those things. I think up until this point we haven't really been able to do that, and that's something that we mentioned in the governance thing. The PDAO itself wasn't really a proper voting body or an organization, but now it is. It definitely is. So it's possible to actually kind of hand over that control to the PDAO, and it's something that we've wanted to do for a long time, but we just had to do it in the right order, and with enough kind of confidence that the PDAO can just take over that control as a body as well. So that's going to be really exciting, and it does kind of like set the stage for like further developments later on. But initially, it's kind of like those parameter changes and treasury spends that the on-chain kind of like voting system will cover.
And then just as follow-up questions to that, so things like code changes will still be voted on by the ODAO, at least until the ODAO is removed, and non-chain related things like, I don't know, governance rules or something like that. Is that just going to be voted on with the snapshot voting, or would that be voted on this new system? Something that's just like a voting of members on a GMC or something like that.
Yeah, no, you still have two mechanisms. So we still need a signaling mechanism and then an on-chain mechanism. Like not everything is on-chain, and also voting on-chain obviously is more costly. So signaling off-chain signaling there's still a massive need for that, because you want that to be as kind of like cheap as possible. But on-chain voting is a little bit more expensive because you actually need to make an on-chain do an on-chain transaction. So that is definitely something that we're kind of like mindful of. So that's why signaling will still be around, and it'll still kind of like direct the protocol in that sense. But the on-chain kind of like voting system will actually enact some of those key things. We actually don't think the on-chain voting system won't be used that often, but it does give the PDAO that on-chain voting power, which is obviously very important. So yeah.
Oh, excellent. Thanks for taking the time to kind of explain that a little bit more detail here. The next item in the biweekly was that the Base protocol, this is the L2 by Coinbase, has now, we've deployed an exchange rate provider on there. You want to explain that a little bit more and explain kind of how these exchange rate providers work on, I guess now, multiple L2s with rETH?
Yeah, so the kind of strategy for L2 adoption really is, so rETH or liquid staking token in general, but rETH in particular is pretty good in terms of the L2 ecosystem, because no matter where you acquire it from, whether you acquire it from kind of like whether you acquire it on Optimism or whether you acquire it from mainnet layer 1, Ethereum mainnet, you're still staking. You're still staking ETH. So, and you're still kind of like getting those staking rewards and all of that sort of thing. So, so in that respect, the way that we kind of like expand to layer 2s is that we have to support liquidity on those platforms. Now, from a technical perspective, what that means is we often use Balancer to as one of the kind of liquidity providers that we have. We do use others sometimes, but Balancer is quite a natural fit. They have this thing called a metastable pool, which is very, very good for rETH. And the idea around expanding to these L2s is we generally Balancer appears, well, but the Balancer team deploy balancer onto an L2, and for rETH to be included in balancer using one of these metastable pools, we need to deploy a thing called an exchange rate provider. And what that basically means is that the rETH exchange rate gets pushed to the L2 so that it can be picked up by balancer and used in their metastable pool. So that's the thing, the kind of like technical thing that we do a lot with L2s is we develop this kind of like exchange rate provider to push the rate to those L2s. It's not that's actually done by the Oracle DAO at the moment, but as part of their kind of like network submission. But later on we can change that. That's not a huge issue, but that's essentially what it does. It kind of pushes those exchange rates out to the different L2s. We currently have that for Optimism, Arbitrum, ZK Sync Era, and Polygon. And now we have it on Base as well.
Oh, excellent! What was the SHIB L2 that came out this week? Shibonium or whatever. I guess we have to get one for that too.
Perhaps. I think we actually there's a few things that we need to support in L2. To be honest. Ideally, EVM compatibility is one thing. Also, I think we when I say we, I mean I think the DAO tends to prefer, and when I say the DAO, more meaning the IMC, tend to prefer kind of like roll-ups to a degree. But it actually depends a little bit on the IMC whether we do the technical deployment, because it really depends on whether we're going to incentivize liquidity on that protocol. On that L2 as a protocol, and so we often check with the IMC to make sure that they're going to support that, so that when we deploy this rate provider, they'll the liquidity is going to be incentivized. So that's definitely something that we do.
Yeah, there definitely has to be a means to the end and a purpose for it. Now tell me a little bit more about this next one. This is one you might have to explain it to me like I'm 5, which is that there's going to be an rETH reward tracker subgraph and API for it. What does that mean, and how does it benefit the rETH holders?
So rETH is a non-rebasing token, which is great in pretty much every way except tracking rewards, right? So it's kind of like the Achilles heel of a non-rebasing token is reward tracking. But if we can solve that, then it's like the perfect token. So basically what it is the way that rETH works, obviously, is that the exchange rate goes up over time. And so reward tracking is actually quite tricky, because you need to have a bit of state. In other words, you need to kind of like track the account and when somebody bought rETH, what the exchange rate was at that point in time versus what it is now. And it gets a little bit complicated. And from a website perspective, we've kind of steered away from that, only really because we want to keep the website as stateless as possible if we can. So we were tending to use the subgraph a little bit, but we're kind of like doing a bit of everything at the moment. So we're trying to work with we're working with subgraph to fill out the information necessary for rETH reward tracking, and we're also kind of like building our own API, which we're going to open source to do that reward tracking as well, so that we can, first of all, that we can build like a UI that shows rewards over time. we also get a lot of partners. When I say partners, or I should say collaborators. We get a lot of collaborators, other protocols, and wallet integrations and all of that sort of thing that want the rETH rewards over time. And so we need to fill that. We need to fill that void. And so that's why we've kind of like stepped in to kind of do that. We were going to just focus on like the subgraph and API changes. It's like very likely that we'll do a UI that does some of the reward tracking, mainly because you kind of need to do that to validate that you've got the API and everything right anyway. So that's one of the things that we're kind of like working on. So that's that. So at the moment it's mainly doing the API and subgraph elements, but we are kind of like working on a basic kind of UI to make sure that it kind of like works as intended.
And then just a couple of questions on that. Do you have any time frame when you expect that to be done? And then second follow-up question is, do you need parts of that to be done by the community members as like a bounty through the GMC?
So yeah, I mean, I know that some of that stuff was going to be done as like a bounty. I still think like the rETH reward tracker like UI stuff could still be done as a bounty. I'll have to I'll talk to Nick and see what he's thinking as well. But I mean that a UI could probably still be done via that. As I said, we don't have to do everything at the same time. Multiple UIs, it doesn't really hurt to have multiple UIs, particularly like open source UIs and all that sort of thing. So I don't see that being a huge problem. In terms of like the subgraph, I think some of it was done by Derek anyway as a bounty. I believe it's bounty or grant or something. And so some of that has already been done by him anyway, and we're working on him to kind of like do the deployment aspect of that. The API is being done by Nick, but as I said before, it will be open source, so you'll be able to kind of like take that and build on top of that if necessary, and contribute to that. So particularly if there's anything that people want extra or tweaks to it and that sort of thing, I think once we've open sourced the API, that's definitely something that can be that's bountyable as well. So any kind of like extensions to it or changes to it and that sort of thing can be bountied. I mean, Nick's pretty quick on kind of like doing changes. So small changes he could probably do, but larger things, maybe it's a good to kind of like bounty things. Yeah.
And what was your hopeful ETA for the API part, at least?
So I think it's in late stage. Is in late stage development. The subgraph, we are, as I said, we are just working with Derek to release the changes. So that will be out pretty soon. The API itself, I believe, is pretty complete. I think Nick is going through and testing. He had some some inconsistencies with he was going through like large wallets that had lots and lots of transactions, and he was just making sure that they were kind of like covered. But I think he's done most of that now. I'll double check with him when he'll be kind of like done with that, and then we'll try and release it as soon as possible.
Excellent. Well, we'll maybe head on to the next section of the biweekly, which is the governance section. And this is always a fascinating one for me. I enjoy spending some time understanding some of these evolutions and growth developments of the Rocket Pool protocol. And the first one here is a proposal by Nashua that includes 2 changes to the rewards tree spec, which would be version 7 of it. The biggest one, I think, of the 2 changes was that it would actually count the RPL that is bonded in mini pools that are in the beacon chain entry queue. So this would allow them to collect their RPL rewards. And this was, I think, the genesis of this was during last week. it was kind of noted in there that some of our large whales were beginning to convert their LEB16s to LEB8s, but due to the timing, they would miss the rewards, the RPL rewards, as their new formed mini pools would not be counted. And so this kind of fixes that maybe unintentional penalty. And the second change was a very rare occasion that I don't think would ever happen, but nonetheless, we don't have a rule for it, which is, what about if there are no mini pools ever in that reward period? Who gets all the RPL rewards? And Nashua proposes in such an extreme event, they would just go to the PDAO for it. So that, I do encourage people to take a look at that post and provide comments. I don't think there's a signaling yet for it. But I found these personally to be very favorable improvements to the reward tree. I don't know, Mav or Darren, if you want to comment on this.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Particularly the receiving the rewards one makes perfect sense. I think anything that kind of makes the protocol more efficient to a certain degree is good. I think. We certainly don't want people holding back on spinning up, on converting their mini pools. So, and I think it makes sense to have that bridge in place.
Yeah, I think it sounds pretty good. The next update was the period 13 IMC budget was shared, along with periods 9 through 12 in the Treasurer report here, the PDAO Treasurer report. Mav or Darren, any comments on this?
No, I think I'm still I've got stuff on my to-do list in terms of we're sorting out the MC payments at the moment, but yeah, I don't have any comments on that too much.
Excellent. The next one's a very interesting one. It certainly, I think, probably takes the record for the most number of comments in a subthread on there, which is some proposals and I think a little bit of just kind of sensing to the RPL reward system here. This is kind of a rework that was proposed, I think, jointly by Valdorf and Nashua. But there is now kind of a written proposal for that rework of the staking. I don't know, have either of you two had a chance to kind of read through that or the various posts in the channel regarding this proposal?
I very, very briefly read through some stuff yesterday. I haven't really kind of like digest it at the moment, so I'm not going to kind of like go into it too much. But I'll definitely take the opportunity to read through more.
Yeah, I certainly invite everybody to look at it. It's one I think I've mentioned before on here, but Valdorf, particularly, I know he's listening into this call here. Welcome. I think has just done an exceptional job at kind of refining and clarifying the initial proposal. I know when I looked at it, I had a little bit of kind of adverse reaction to it, but once I began to understood it a little bit better, I think I understand it much more, and I'm much more kind of open to the ideal and concept. And one of the things I'll definitely give him a shout out for is he had done an excellent job in one of his GitHub write-ups. That's a very nice introduction to the document. He's got some great graphs and great modeling. I think it showed that most of the node operators will receive a little bit higher RPL than they're currently at right now. But more importantly, I think it begins to align the incentives and the efficiencies with Rocket Pool with the actual amount of RPL rewards earned. So if you're a node operator, and of course everybody loves their RPL rewards, I highly encourage you to take a look at it and spend some time. I will tell you, it is one of the more complex proposals to understand just because of the complexity of it. But I think Valdorf does a really good job in trying to explain it and simplify it as much as possible, but still produced a tremendous amount of data to kind of back up the thoughts. And I know Nashua was helping him greatly with this, and was kind of perhaps even the genesis of some of this alignment thought. So I encourage you all to take a look at that if you haven't seen it yet. But it's still in the very early stages, so comment if you're at all interested. There's a kind of a redo here, which is the RPIP 26, which is up for vote again. And I actually forget what is this one we're voting on again? I should probably know, but I forget.
I'm pretty sure it was the GMC one. It was the GMC. I was just double checking, but I now have forgotten it myself.
Yeah, I remember we posted the first vote we referenced the draft RPIP, which we shouldn't do according to our rules. And
that's it.
Yeah, but I actually forget the entire thing. I think it had a pretty strong support in the initial one, and this one.
That's right. It was removing the retrospective award cap and establishing the admin position, and also the award cycle being updated from like quarterly to monthly.
Perfect. And I see actually Valdorf here is raised his hand to speak. He's connecting. Hey, greetings.
Hey, no, but you guys got there. No need for me.
All right. Well, it's good. It's good to hear your voice, and welcome to the community call.
Thanks.
Okay. Let's see what the next one is here. Let's see here. And finally, there was some discussion on a draft RPIP here. This one, I believe, was a Nashua concoction that would lock the price of RPL used for the reward snapshot. And this would lock it 2 days before. And if I remember this one, it's that the ODAO sets the RPL price that's used for new mini pool formation, as well as eligibility, the 10% minimum bonding level to participate in the RPL rewards. And just because of the, I guess, the frequency or the cadence of updates, that RPL price update could be as far ahead as 19 hours, or it could literally be as short as, I suppose, the block right ahead, or perhaps it could even be the same block as the snapshot is completed. So you may not have much time to top off your node if you fall just slightly below or fall under and want to reinvest in the RPL amount. In this RPIP, he's soliciting some early input and a little bit of kind of sediment voting on. Would just use, instead of the one right before it, would use the one preceding that for your eligibility. I don't know if there's anything else on that, Darren or Mav, that you want to talk about.
I haven't gone through that one either, actually, at the moment. But I mean, it makes sense, although it does feel like, if you're that close, I mean, the trouble is that RPL has moved quite considerably recently, and I think that's probably where the problem is. If you're kind of like topping up at the end, have you left enough? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I'll go through and I'll have a read through it.
Yeah, it does. It does add a little bit to it, but I think I think maybe what Nasha was driving for is to just give a little bit more time, especially if time zones come into place, at least 24 hours, and so this gives a roughly a 2-day period for it. I don't think it really alters the security model of Rocket Pool at all, but it does give a little bit more flexibility to the node operator. If they do decide to reinvest or top off a little bit, they can do so without having to try to time it so aggressively as they're doing now.
Yeah, the timing I can definitely see is it's not as convenient, or it's hard.
Yeah. Okay, we're next going on to the integrations area here, and I think Mav will probably speak to most of these things. But Darren, before we leave you for this section here, I wanted to ask one other question that wasn't on the biweekly, which is a status update on the hiring. I know you guys have been busy still conducting interviews and doing next round interviews and so forth. Any word you can share with the community member as to how that hiring is looking?
Yes, I can't completely say it yet, but it is pretty much concluded. So there's something I've got to do before I can say any more than that. But it is pretty much concluded.
And do you think we're going to get 1 or 2 devs out of it, or can you not even say that?
We're definitely getting one. We're definitely getting one. We are potentially hiring a junior. So in addition, so that is very, very likely. But they're going to be starting like in a little while, in a couple of months' time. So if they start, sorry. We've still got to go through the confirmation part of that, but it is looking likely that we will hire a junior as well as a senior.
Oh, excellent. And Joe's still very much in his junior dev position. He's not leaving, is he?
Yeah, he's definitely junior. Yeah. It's like...
All right, well, let's continue on here with the integrations for it. There was a whole list of integrations, Mav, starting with Raft, Coinbase Wallet, Notional. Do you want to run through those and maybe kind of highlight the ones that you think are the most important for our business development needs?
Yeah, for sure. Let's go. A few of them are quite similar. First of all, we can start off with Raft. So there has been some additional discussion within the Discord. The governance channel has a thread called IMC Public Discussion, and there's been a bit of a chat there between the IMC and Raft. Essentially, what's happening right now is that Raft are providing some liquidity incentives on Maverick protocol, and there is potential for the IMC to help to co-fund some of that. If you're not aware what Raft is a protocol that supports rETH. You can use it as collateral, and you can mint their stable asset, which is called R. So that is one option that you might want to avail yourself of, especially if you're looking at Gravatar, which is mentioned a little bit further down in this integration section, but has been pretty popular with rETH holders, and the mint cap is perpetually being hit. Recently, it was raised again by a further 1 million. We also have Coinbase Wallet. So this was a pretty big deal, actually. They supported liquid staking with Rocket Pool within Coinbase Wallet itself. So obviously, if you consider the reach that Coinbase has as a brand, especially within the US, for them to support, or not only support rETH, but also considering that they have their own staking product, right, cbETH, I think it really goes to show that it's not all talk when they are mentioning their core values of wanting to help to preserve decentralization.
Yeah, I was pretty excited. I used Coinbase as my on-ramp, and I just so happened to have logged in, and they had rETH staking there, highly prominent in the wallet. It was kind of front and center, but it had a big red box over it that said, full, deposit pool full. So I was like, okay, maybe that's why they put it before those. It's so hot you can't even get it.
Yeah, it's many such cases, right, of either too much or too little rETH demand. At least we know that in the end things tend to balance out, and it's good to have that integration. Just like MetaMask before it, I think was also unfortunate timing, but just in terms of the awareness there, even if it is full, it is great to have that. There is 4 kind of new integrations from DeFi protocols that I'll quickly run through. Some similarities between them. first of all, we can talk about Fuji Finance. So they support rETH as collateral now. You can take out a debt position in USDC or leverage up your position with ETH through Fuji Finance. So there's now a rather long list of DeFi protocols that support some kind of borrowing against rETH. So really good integration of our liquid staking token into the DeFi world, which is continuing. We then have Interest Protocol. So they are deploying on Optimism, and they're supporting rETH as well. So again, an opportunity to use rETH as collateral, but this time on an L2. So Interest Protocol, they issue a stablecoin called USDI that's on Ethereum mainnet, and on Optimism is OPUSDI. So a little bit of a word salad there, but another example in the long list of integrations. Next up, we have Mean Finance. So I believe we've talked about these guys a little bit in a previous call. What Mean Finance do is support regular investing into rETH. So even if it's a small amount, we know that obviously one of the great things about liquid staking is the ability to just take with even small amounts. But recently, and even still, gas is at 30, the rewards can kind of be eaten away relatively quickly in terms of gas if you're only taking a small amount. So what Mean Finance does is provides an option to make smaller kind of regular payments and to avoid some of those transaction fees. Finally, we have Notional. So Notional Finance, they are launching their V3 on Arbitrum and ETH mainnet. So this is going to enable liquid staking token holders to borrow against them. So for rETH, there are opportunities including borrowing DAI and USDC and USDT. Their V3 will also have some vault strategies. So that's when we talk about things like hyperstaking. There's going to be an option there through Notional. I think that is all of this fortnight's integrations.
Yeah, it always amazes me, Mav, that you can keep all of these different DeFi protocols straight in your head and kind of explain them to the level of detail that you have. I'm kind of curious, like with all these integrations, I mean, do they reach out ahead of time, or because it's just a permissionless integration, do they integrate it and then you notice it on Twitter? But like, how's the sausage made in the back end? I mean, how do you keep track of all these integrations to produce in the biweekly?
It is a bit of a mix. I would say it falls into three main camps. So first of all is an integration that, as you say, is discovered through Twitter. Sometimes Rocket Pool intern sends them through to me, or just as part of screening, if you pick up in your account kind of talking about Rocket Pool or rETH as part of an integration. Sometimes that's the first thing that I not only learn about the integration, but about the protocol itself. So there's a little bit of that for sure. And then for the other two camps, it's kind of a combination of someone reaching out in advance. Sometimes that is very early on when the protocol or project is usually looking for potentially co-marketing or some kind of co-incentive. And the second part, which is kind of a variation on that, is when they reach out kind of late stage and the wheels are already in motion, and it's more just coordinating and making us aware of what's coming down the pipe. Some of it also is from my work to kind of reach out proactively, and that is a role that Grant is starting to take over increasingly. So there is a little bit of that too, but certainly at this point, rETH is pretty well known in terms of what liquid staking tokens a protocol might want to support. Certainly up there near the top.
Yeah, and then just kind of a follow back to our previous conversation when we were talking about, token 2049 and ETH Singapore. I mean, is that one of the things where you'll actually try to, or Grant will try to meet with a number of these integrating protocols there and have business development meetings, or, how much of it is done in kind of in-person meet and greets versus, Twitter meet and greets?
Yeah, I certainly like the IRL meetup. We are coordinating some, I mean, maybe not even a meeting, just potentially a coffee or running into each other at the events. But I think that's a really important part of going to these conferences and events. So we'll certainly be planning that with some of the protocols that we chat to, absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, let's move on to the media and marketing here. We were just starting to talk about at the beginning of the call before we went back to the top, which was the large amount of press that the Coinbase venture, I don't know if I'd call it an investment or a partnership with RPL came. What can you share about that and some of the genesis of that?
So as far as the genesis goes, that's a Langers and obviously Dave question. I'm not sure exactly how much can be shared on this call, but certainly if I put my marketing hat on, the coverage that it gained was huge, especially since it's a topic that's kind of been talked about publicly in the past, at least. Depends how public you consider the Rocket Pool Discord to be, but certainly not a secret. I was surprised, though, at the amount of coverage it got from some of the pretty big names. There were a couple of media outlets that were pretty quick out the gate, but then it kind of continued on, and we had the likes of Masari, CoinGraph, CoinMarketCap as well, the Block, CoinDesk. So yeah, pretty good list there. A few links to kind of sort through and curate, that's for sure.
Yeah, maybe either of you can't say, but do we expect any more partnership with Coinbase, or do you think that they're limited just to their role in helping run the ODAO node?
I think on that point, there always was kind of intent to work with ventures going forwards, and I suppose by extension with the kind of Coinbase group. Obviously, the timing, especially in the US, is a little unfortunate in terms of what's going on there regulatory-wise. Yeah, I think in a perfect world there would be potentially more opportunities to work a little bit closer with Coinbase Ventures, but certainly right now, and it's I guess the case for a lot of crypto, when it comes to media marketing, messaging, announcements, you have to be very careful. There's certainly some regulatory red flags that you want to avoid. So yeah, it just happens to be the case that in the current environment, it's pretty tricky in terms of working with ventures. But if there's one thing that we know about this industry, things can change very quickly. Not always for the worse. It can be for the better. So may not be too much longer to wait until potentially there's some additional areas we can work together with ventures on. We talked about Base earlier. So as that kind of ecosystem grows and develops, and depending on the IMC's priorities, that could be an additional area where Rocket Pool kind of expands and participates in the growing Coinbase ecosystem.
All right.
I'll kind of like echo that a little bit, but I mean, there's definitely there is definitely kind of desire from Coinbase's side and from our side to kind of capitalize on those opportunities to work together. So that we kind of, when we first started talking to Coinbase, we went through a bit of a kind of exploratory sort of thing about how we could kind of like work with each other. So I think and having kind of Coinbase Ventures, and we actually have quite a lot of contacts now within Coinbase. So it's quite good in the sense that we can, if an opportunity does come up, we can kind of reach out and start, making use of that. So there's definitely desire from both perspectives. Coinbase is very, they want DeFi protocols to be, front and center. And so that is kind of one of the things that they desire, and so that's so we're part of that kind of strategy as well.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, thanks very much for sharing that. I could certainly see a lot of advantages for such a good partnership there. So a couple of things. Dapnode published a blog post about Rocket Pool. Morpho Labs tweeted about leveraged staking yields for rETH. And Token Terminal highlighted the strengths of decentralized Rocket Pool node operators. Mav, of those three there, is there any that you want to really highlight?
I just quickly, probably the Morpho Labs one is this leverage staking or hyper staking, obviously with the potential for increased returns, also comes usually increased risk, and it may not be for everyone. So something that you should look into closely, but having a nice kind of UI there, as they say, to open and close positions in a single click makes things potentially a lot more straightforward. The Token Terminal one was also great to see them kind of highlighting the number of Rocket Pool node operators compared to other protocols. So you have 3,000 plus, or at the very least thousands of node operators, and dropping off pretty quickly when it comes to the rest of them. Other items here, just a couple small ones. There's another exchange listing for RPL, it seems, obviously as well. That's an important area to do your own research before engaging with an exchange. And then a couple of Twitter Spaces recently. I also joined one last night with ZK Sync. But if you're wanting to hear a little bit more from Grant, Rocket Pool's newest team member, the recording of his guest appearance on one of these community course Twitter Spaces is, of course, available on YouTube. And I think with that, we're through the media and marketing section.
Yeah, and I think that's the last section to the biweekly update. It's always amazing the amount of stuff that goes on. But Mav and Darren, anything that we haven't covered yet that you want to share with the community here?
A couple quick things from me. We do have a new time for SSV locked in for next week. So fingers crossed, that is second or third time likely that we get them on. That'll be great. Great opportunity to discuss DVT. And then the second is an interesting one. We did have an opportunity from a community member. If anyone is really involved in the Web3 space as like a founder or a manager or a dev in a senior position, you can check out I'm just loading up to make sure I get the right channel, the protocol information announcements channel. I've referenced it in my most recent post there. But yeah, there's an opportunity if you want to take part in a paid survey to share some of your, I suppose, thoughts and experience. Other than that, we will see you. That's all from me. I'll pass it over to Langers, but I'll catch you on the next Twitter space.
I guess I'm really excited about what we're working on at the moment in terms of the PDL voting stuff that's coming along really well. So that's looking really good. So really excited about the kind of like future stuff that's coming up, and all the governance stuff that's going on as well. That's really cool to see. A big shout out to Valdorf for doing a lot of that, which while you're there. Yeah, so no, it's really good, and I'm looking forward to the conferences that we're kind of like planning on as well. So yeah, it's been going to be a pretty good year.
And any bread, stale or fresh or garlic that you haven't shared yet that you'd kind of like to hint out on this call?
Oh, can we talk about, at least very briefly, about our meeting yesterday, Langers? Oh
yeah, okay. I want to kind of open that up to the community generally, anyway. But the LEB4 talk workshop. Well, sorry, one second. I just got to close the door. One sec.
Oh, wait a minute. He just can't start with LEB4 and then say, wait a second, wait a minute. What is this about LEB4s?
Sorry, I was just shutting the door because my potentially family coming home. So we did a workshop yesterday about LEB4s and whether it can be technically, what we were kind of getting a technical position on LEB4s. I think from a technical perspective, LEB4s makes perfect sense to go in for Saturn. So that's definitely something that we're looking at. I think the only thing that we're kind of looking at, and this is again going through and reading Valdorf's work and your work, obviously, is kind of like the economics part of it. We just want to be like doubly sure of the kind of like the economics part of it, and what it means to the design, because I think there was a couple of things around whether there was like a minimum amount of collateral that you had to have to kind of like protect against some of the EL reward stuff. So we're kind of like wanting to kick off that discussion again so that we can lock LEB4s down for Saturn. That's where we're up to at the moment.
Okay, wait a minute. I think I fell off my chair here. Let me just see. You guys did a workshop on LEB4s, and they may or may not come in as early as Houston. Is that what you just said?
No, not Houston, Saturn. Because it has to be at the same time as Megapause. Made it would be the best technical kind of like delivery time would be Saturn rather than Houston. Yeah.
Okay. But still very exciting to see and hear the kind of discussion and the trajectory for including them as early as Saturn. I think that's exceptional news. So anything that the community can do to kind of engage in that or help flesh out some more of the kind of refinement of this, or how can the community help in that process?
Well, kick off the discussion again. I mean, I've already kind of like started some like initial chats with Val, mainly because he's been kind of working on that the LEB paper that he wrote. So read Valdorf's LEB kind of like paper if you want to help and have kind of like an opinion on it, and that's definitely something that you can do. And then create a thread. I'll jump in there as soon as I can. I've just kind of like been busy. Everything's been up in the air, but that's definitely something that I need to lock down very, very soon, because we want to get that information out to basically the roadmap information out, and that's like the last piece of the puzzle to like click in. And I think from a release perspective, I think the LEB4s will be a great addition to that. But we just need to make sure that we can confirm it and being in the roadmap for kind of like Saturn. So yes, definitely discuss that, because it's not necessarily up to us; it's up to the community about whether that goes in. But we were just assessing it from a technical perspective and to try and get like a core team like perspective on what we think about it. So that's why we had that workshop yesterday. But we're kind of like opening up now to the community to kind of like nail down those things as well. So that would really help if we can kind of like start discussing like Valdorf's paper and how it kind of could work, so that we can kind of lock it down for Saturn.
Yeah, so it sounds like that there were kind of two issues. One, a technical issue about feasibility, and it sounds like that's very promising. And then the second one is just kind of a risk appetite, right? Is the lower the node operator collateral, the greater the risk appetite for MEV stealing. But, certainly that whole picture dynamic changes with megapools, right? I mean, I think Val's work was excellent in there. And I don't know, Val, if you want to comment while you're on, but it seemed like 4 ETH was still within the realm of possibilities, even with mini pools. But with mega pools, it certainly, mega pools and forced exits, it becomes very, very low risk appetite, I think.
Right. So essentially, 4 ETH would probably be fine if the market kept exactly as it's been. But that kind of buffer doesn't really make me feel good. So it's more of with node level collateral, which megapools make really easy. Then yeah, you can easily support 4, potentially even something like 2. So yeah, at that point, it's more of what do we want to do more than can we support 4 in the face of MEV stealing. I think the answer is yes, we can. Although not necessarily for the first pool. So that's one of the things to keep in mind here. We're going to be favoring the big folk a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the part that needs a bit of discussion, because there's going to be a little bit of community consensus needed around some of that stuff. But I mean, that's that'll be good to kind of get that out into the. I mean, you've already kind of like done that, so I think it's more about shining a light on that and kind of like working through that community consultation.
Yeah, I got to think that they'd be very excited to kind of have that debate and discussion about, risk appetites and, windows of risk opportunity until certain, forced exits or the megapools are in place. So I think this is a discussion that I very much welcome and look forward to here. So I think that's very exciting news. Thank you very much for sharing that. Darren, the one last thing you reminded me of in kind of your commentary here is your Medium article about the roadmap. Any thoughts as to when that might come out?
So it was going to try to finish it, but I think it's actually going to be a Dave article, not me article. So I've done like a whole bunch of it, but we're kind of like Dave and I are working together on it. It'll be done when it's done, unfortunately.
Yeah, I guess
it is. I can tell you, it's very, very high on our priority list. It's just, there's just lots on our list.
Yeah, it's not like the team is doing anything apparently from these biweekly calls, right? I don't see much work getting done. So no, it's actually quite amazing everything that the team is doing, and I'm excited to learn that the team may be growing here sooner rather than later. And I'm very excited for what's going to be in that roadmap, including these LEBs, LEB4s and below. So I'm looking forward to it. All right. Anything else between Val, Mav, and Darren?
No, that's me. It's all good.
All good.
It's good to have a chat.
Yeah, it was great speaking with y'all. And Val, thanks very much for coming up on stage and sharing a few of your thoughts on the matters.
Yep, thanks.
All right. See you guys all next time.
Thanks, everyone.
See you guys. Thank you.